Professor Dr. Andrés Pérez from the University of Applied Science of Western Switzerland. He is going to talk about precision agriculture and construction of field crop models for tropical fruits.
Good morning. Do you hear me? Okay, so I'd like to thank first the organizers for inviting me to give this talk and congratulate them for the work they have done. The title of my talk is Precision Agriculture and the Construction of Field Crop Models for Tropical Fruits. It was the name of a collaboration project between Colombia and Switzerland, founded by both governments. And I'm talking on behalf of the people having worked on this project. So Héctor Satizabal, who is there, he completed his PhD during this project and now he's postdoc. Miguel Barreto, who is not here, I guess. Daniel, who is in CIAT now in Colombia. And some Swiss, Alexandre Boujard, Jean-Rémy Peclar, and Carlos Andrés, who joined us this year. Let me start with this very nice picture of a mango. What we want in this mango is to have good taste, vitamins inside, no pesticides. If we think of the farmer, what he wants is to have this, and of course, long flavor and texture retention, such that he can transport the mango and wait for the buyer for the consumer to buy it. He wants no pests and no pesticides because this incurs extra costs. He wants healthy and resistant plants. Well, agriculture has been among us for about 10,000 years. So for millennia, we have been consciously selecting crops varieties according to some features. So this gives larger features or more tasty or so on. And we've been acting on nature with a force which can be seen as an artificial selection action. Now, in recent years, thanks to advances in genetic engineering, we can go beyond the natural occurring variations of plants. So we can go and engineer genes in order to create new fruits. For instance, there is a new tomato which was approved in 1994, and you know there have been some plants resistant to pests and so on. But there is a lot of controversy. I found a very nice phrase which resumes the problem. There is faith in biotechnology, but little appetite for GM food. So perhaps there is little appetite for GM food, but it is anyway a possibility for some crops. For instance, in Colombia, I've read that it is forbidden to commercialize GM food, but for instance, cotton is an alternative. And there has been an increase in the income of farmers thanks to biotechnology. Now, if we keep on with natural varieties, there is an alternative. And this alternative is precision agriculture or site-specific agriculture, which it is a farming management system where we observe and respond to intra-field variations. What is interesting is that behind this management approach, there is a key technology, and this key technology is informatics. So just as biotechnology revolutionized agriculture some years ago, we expect that it is the time to informatics to revolutionize agriculture. And informatics is needed because we rely on image satellites for images. We rely on analysis of data and geospatial tools. So this is the subject of our project, is to use computer science to exploit this data and try to ameliorate production and all the desires of the users and the farmers. Precision agriculture has been proven to be useful in certain crops, for instance, sugarcane and coffee, because they are information-rich crops. But fruits are normally, for instance, in Colombia, we have small-scale farmers, and there isn't quite much research about this. So these are under-researched crops. This is a problem. And because these are small farmers, small-scale farmers, precision agriculture can be a prohibitive technology. So they don't have access to install sensors and analyze data, access to satellite data, and so on by themselves. So we get to this approach where we can have site-specific agriculture based on farmers' experiences. So this is a slide developed by a CIAD researcher, which summarizes the approach. So we have environmental characterization, so we have databases. We can go to the fields and extract more information. We have the farmer on the loop, which is a particular approach of this project. So we encourage the farmer to go and give us data, go and measure data and give us data. And then we have the analysis, the data analysis part, where computer science is fundamental. This is possible because in 2005 we started this project funded by both governments, and this slide shows you a feature of this collaboration. So on the Swiss side, the HEIG-VD in Yverdon, founded by the Secrétariat d'État à la Recherche. And since we don't have PhD programs, we collaborated with the University of Lausanne and University of Ghent in Belgium. So very few logos, but on the right side, our Colombian partners, led by biotech, had to find a lot of funding. So they went to a lot of governmental instances to ask for money. This is, on the one hand, very complex. There is an administrative burden. And I remember during these years, we were constantly asked to provide reports because we have to make a report to this instance, and 3 months later, they asked us once again, okay, new report. And we already send you information. No, but this is another funding, you know. So it's very complex to make these sort of projects. And yesterday we mentioned this to the people of the SNF. Yes, it's quite simply to manage a research project in Switzerland. Well, during these 3 years, our role was to work on data analysis. So the idea was to use particular methods to analyze data, the so-called bio-inspired methods, in order to get data from the farmers and come up with models to predict or explain the behavior of these crops. So here you can see some examples: sugarcane, and then we have mora, lulo, and papaya. No, not papaya. We started with sugarcane because there was a lot of data regarding sugarcane, and it is a very nice example of how we can increase the productivity going from imported technology to local technology and then to precision agriculture. So you can see the figure, it's always getting higher productivities, and there were other examples, for instance, with guanabana. When you have wild production of guanabana, you have a certain productivity, and if you start to control a little bit the crops, you get almost 3 times higher productivity. So there were already some examples, and this was the motivation of our project to use the same ideas with other fruits. The idea behind the project was that every time a farmer plants a crop, there is a sort of a scientific experiment behind this, because there are environmental conditions, management conditions. We have data from databases telling us what was the weather, what's the climate in that site, what kind of soil. And with all this data, we try to analyze, okay, what were the circumstances that bring us a higher productivity. Another idea was that, okay, you can have several crops and you can analyze the diverse conditions during these years And even for a given crop in a given site, if you have data from several years, you have like N experiments. You have an experiment for each crop. So for sugarcane, for instance, since we have crops almost every year, we have almost every year a new experiment which can be useful to analyze and to provide then recommendations to the farmers. A clear approach was to introduce the farmer in the loop. So as you can see some pictures, biotech went to the fields and tried to convince the farmers to get involved into this project. At first, we thought we are going to send some agronomists to make the measures. With this, we are sure of having high quality data. But then there was this idea of, okay, let's go and try to explain the farmers how to do simple measures and then try to use this data. So we were more asking for less rigorous data, but trying to get more data and, of course, involve the farmer in the process. So biotech and our partners in Colombia designed some calendars like this to distribute to the farmers and ask them to note their productivities and their management. If they find, for instance, different qualities or diseases, try to identify the conditions of their crops. So these are some pictures where they try to explain the farmer how to note these diseases and so on. Then in 2010, CIAT started a project financed by Asofrucol, and they announced this as a fruit revolution in Colombia. So we have already worked on this during several years, developing methodologies to deal with this data, and CIAT proposed to go to the farmers and try to get more data and try to provide recommendations to the farmers. So they have this idea of developing a fruitichiva, which it doesn't exist indeed. It was at the beginning of the project they had this idea, but because of costs, it is not a reality. But it was a very nice idea, and I know they are making a very nice work going to the farmers and getting new data that we are still dealing with and providing recommendations. What we are doing here is to use this data to create models and compute maps. So the result of our models is this. We have maps, for instance, for mango, plátano, aguacate, and what you see here is colors indicating the regions where we might have better productivity. So if a farmer wants to know what would be better to crop here, he can go and see these maps, or he can contact CIAT. CIAT is going towards them indeed, and they can decide what to crop. As I mentioned, after this 3-year project, we continued working with them thanks to the founding of KFH and our school, and we continue with modeling and with knowledge transfer. So we have had the opportunity to go to Colombia and give some talks. Here's Miguel giving a talk in biotech, and we have very nice contact with CENICAña, CENIAGUA, and other institutions in Colombia. In our current research, so as I mentioned, we are collaborating with Andrés now, who is an expert in fuzzy logic. And to illustrate what we are doing now is that we are analyzing data, and the objective is to get rules like this to get to recommendations. So the idea is to have, for instance, okay, if the temperature or the precipitation is high or low and so on in this region, this will get us to higher productivity and so on. So this is an example which has a very nice performance in the models regarding aguacate. We are also working in another domain which is very interesting. The idea is to integrate the temporal context in the models. There exist some databases, WorldClim and BioClim, which are available on the internet, and they are widely used for ecological modeling, but they are static databases. They compute, for instance, the mean of the last 20 years of temperature in a given region. And of course, it is not always every year is not the same. So we are trying to compute new maps using the data from meteorological stations, and coming up with maps for typical type of years. So for instance, El Niño, La Niña year, or a normal year. So in this way, the farmers will be able to have more precise information about these databases. Okay, what are the fruits of these projects? So we have had, of course, peer-reviewed scientific knowledge, publications, conferences and journals, and PhD reports. And we have crop models and modeling methodologies which are currently being used in Colombia by CIAT, by Senicaña. And one thing which was very nice to me to know is that these methodologies and these models are also being used by researchers and students in Colombia. So now the impact is such that we don't really know who is now using our models, but a couple of months ago we had a researcher from CIAT who came and told us, yes, we have a student from Univalle, from Universidad Nacional, who is modeling this and this crop like we did during our project. So the research methodology has gone to the students, and now we don't even know that this is happening, so this is quite nice. Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to finish with a picture of the team. If you have questions, please don't hesitate.
Okay, some questions? Yeah.
Good morning. Thank you very much for your interesting presentation. I'm on the board of directors of Swiss NGOs in International Development Cooperation. So my question goes in this direction: how far are your findings ready as a product that can be deployed or used or taken further by actors of international NGOs or development cooperation?
That's a very good question. Well, CIAT is really our partner who is close to farmers, and I know that they publish the models and the software on the websites. So this is supposed to be a public software, and they are pretty finished, so they are ready to be used. So we will be open to collaborate and to diffuse the use of these models in other contexts. So I would say that they are quite finished, they are quite ready to be used. Some of them are required the execution by an expert, but some of them are quite easy to use. So I'm open to to discuss with you to see how we can help in other contexts.
What do you think about the application of this method for more marginal farmers, let's say in drier regions with better communication skills and probably illiterate or something? It can be reached, this public, or which is the public, the socioeconomic context of the farmers?
That's a good question. I don't know if I can really answer, but the calendars were supposed to be used by anyone who can write down some data about productivity and just cross the quality of the fruit or the diseases they find. There is also a methodology to analyze the soil, which is quite simple, and I think anyone can do it. Then it is the experts who really exploit this data, but the data indeed can be obtained by anyone.
Perhaps linked a little bit to the previous question. I know in Africa they have fantastic applications for economic purposes of mobile phones. So one obvious way for data input, I would have thought, would be to use mobile phone technology. But actually, I had another question in mind, which was, in contrast to the previous talk, which was really sort of geographically specific, your sort of methodology seems to be, global in its possible extent, even including, vineyards in Switzerland.
Yes.
So, are there similar projects developed specifically in other parts of the world, or do you guys link hands?
No, indeed, yes. The methodology can be used anywhere, and we are not close to this. We are not close only to Colombia, and indeed, CIAT is an international organization who aims at providing these technologies to all the underdeveloped countries. We have only been close to CIAT, but yes, this is not only designed to be used with Colombia. It can be used with any other country. And indeed, we were thinking about using these approaches with the so-called orphan crops. There are crops for which there is no research and which has a great impact in underdeveloped countries. And regarding the cell phones, indeed, in CIAT, they have developed interfaces to get data from some farmers. So even if, this is a technology which is anywhere. So there is a lot of farmers having their own cell phone, and they are already introducing some data thanks to these interfaces. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Can I just please ask you, I love lulos, and every time in Colombia, I just have breakfast with lulos. I eat them like kiwis, essentially. And I've asked, why don't we have kiwis out here? And they told me in Cali, being a very fertile area, and they grow lulu, it's just that they don't transport well. So is this so, and how do you think that your methodology could improve the production of exportable lulos?
Yes. I'm sorry. When I was starting my talk, I wanted to say if there are difficult questions, I think Hector, who is one of the postdocs having worked on this project, to answer these difficult questions. But indeed, I guess we don't have the answer to this question. We don't really know. We have been dealing with the data as computer scientists, but we don't really have an answer. I don't know if you have a comment on this, Hector. But yes, we all love lulo.
Okay, so you have to work harder on lulos. Thank you very much for the nice talk. Let's go now.
Thank you.